have today Bob Palmer here, who we welcome to the History Collection. Bob and I have known each other for many, many years. He's got a lot to tell you about his experiences in the tea trade. So I'll kick off straight away and say, Bob, where did it all start?
Well, I suppose I came into the tea trade purely by accident. All through my school career, I was intending to be a policeman.
Oh,
and I had applied to join Essex Police as a cadet. I'd gone through a number of interviews. There were 6 vacancies at the time, and I think they had over 500 applicants. I got through to the last 12, and I'd had a number of interviews, a number of medicals, passed them. The final one, we had to go up to police headquarters, and we had another interview, and then a final medical with the police surgeon, and he said, "I'm sorry, you'll be wearing glasses within 2 years." And at the time, they wouldn't take people with glasses. He said, "You can leave it and try and apply again in a couple of years' time and see how you get on." So that rather threw me, and you know, my career aspirations were blown out of the window. And I had no idea what I wanted to do other than to be a policeman. Anyway, I didn't want to go into an office. I didn't want to go into banking or insurance, anything like that. I just happened to be looking through newspaper one day, and I saw an advertisement that Brook Bond were looking for trainees in their tea tasting department. And I thought, well, that sounds a bit different. I had no idea what the tea trade involved.
Yeah,
anyway, I applied, and I was accepted, and I walked through the doors of 3537 Cannon Street on the 16th of August 1965. I had no idea what I was going to be doing, what a trainee in the tea tasting department was supposed to do. But it didn't take me long to find out that you start off by putting samples into tins and
weighing up a lot
putting
a lot of hot water on.
That came a bit later, actually, the weighing up. I started off just boxing up samples and going down to Cutler Street to collect the auction samples, to Mint Warehouse and Orient down in St Catherine's Dock to pick up the auction samples. And that's where it all started. Eventually, I was moved on to the batch making side, tea making side, and did that for a couple of years, and then going down the batches with the taster, and just
like we all did,
learning as you go along.
We all started
on the
exactly. Did you start about the same time as my brother Nick, or?
Well, Nick actually at the time was working for Twinings, I think.
Right, he was.
He was working for Twinings.
They went down to Andover.
And they moved down to Andover, and then he came over. He probably came in about a year or so after me, I think. At the time, Nick Upton was there. He was one of the senior, well, he was probably the senior trainee.
Yes.
Dear old Steve Rudin, who's no longer with us, he was there. Johnny Johnson. Terry Porter was the Ceylon buyer. Tom Corley was the Assam buyer. Eric Foote was the senior man.
Absolutely, yes. The old Eric.
Yes. And, gradually, I worked my way up, and I became assistant to a gentleman by the name of Michael Gherkin.
Oh, Pickle Gherkins, yes.
Yes.
Who went to Nairobi.
He did indeed.
He was a real character.
He was known in the office as the Gust because he came through at such speed that papers blew off desks and things like that. He was a lovely man. Yeah. And he took me under his wing, I suppose, in a way, and we were very involved in developing instant tea at the time. He was the sort of instant tea man, and I was his assistant, and doing all sorts of things on extraction, which was interesting.
Fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very early days, wasn't it?
That was, late 60s. And then I think it was about 1969, 1970, Brook Bond merged with Liebigs. And the tea side was split into two sections. Brook Bond Oxo, which was the retail,
Pigeon
domestic
side
market,
of it, yeah.
and Brookbond-Liebig, which was the trading side.
Yeah.
And I went on to the Liebig side. I went into trading, and it was sort of completely separate divisions. We, although we were in the same office, we were completely separate.
Yeah.
And we had two buying sides. There was the OXO side buying for the domestic market, and the Liebig side buying for overseas for various people, doing the overseas blending.
Was it still Cannon Street then, or they moved down to Croydon by then?
And this actually we'd moved into Sir John Lyne.
You came to Sir John Lyne House, commodities, I know, on the third floor.
Yes.
I remember it well.
That's right.
Yes,
Yep.
Derek Watson was the big boss, because he was the coffee guy.
He was the coffee man, yeah. We moved into Sir John Lyne House, and the OXO side moved down to Croydon.
That's right. Yeah.
And so we were completely separate, and we did the Liebig side looked after the marketing of the Brookbond estates in India and Kenya and into the UK, selling tea to effectively the Brookbond domestic side's competitors. But
absolutely, yes.
yeah. But
and then when how far from that was it when the Unilever takeover and Lipton came in? Because
that was quite a bit later.
not a hell of a lot later.
Yeah.
No, well, of course, we were in Sir John Lyne House for a long time.
Yes.
Forgets that.
We were into John Lyne House. I was in, I'll start off. My first overseas posting was to Bangladesh for Brookbond-Liebig in 1973 after the Pakistan-Bangladesh War of Independence, and I flew out, having never been outside of Europe, flying out to Bombay initially, and then to Calcutta, and then I was going to go on to Chittagong to run the office for a few months, because the Brookbond office in Bangladesh was actually enemy property because it was Brookbond Pakistan. And they weren't allowed to do things, but there was a lot of tea in Bangladesh which was effectively being given away, and I think everybody in the world wanted some of it. But foreign exchange, foreign currency in Bangladesh was a typical thing. A lot of it was being done by barter. They had no money, and Ciba Geigy was supplying chemicals and pharmaceuticals, and taking tea as a barter product, and through the services of Thomas Cumberland Linskip, Brookbond were introduced to Ciba Geigy, and struck up this barter deal. And I was to go out to Bangladesh. We had a young man in the Chittagong office who was doing the buying in the auction. We were sending out orders to him, buy at prices.
Was this when Charles Richardson Bryant was there?
No, Charles had left.
Oh, gone by then.
Charles had gone by then.
Chittagong Charlie.
He'd gone on to Indonesia. Saiful Islam was buying. We would say that, buy 2,000 chests at this price. And he'd come back and say, I bought you 200 chests, but at a much lower price.
Oh, no good at all.
That wasn't quite the idea. Anyway, I was sent out to try and up the buying.
Put things on an even keel.
Yes. And I flew out in the September of 1973. And as I say, my first flight outside of Europe, and we were refueling in Beirut, flying into Beirut. As I came in, with tanks either side of the runway, because the Israelis had bombed it a few days before. Anyway, I had forgotten to get any film.
Just as well you didn't, actually, probably, Bob.
My camera. So I thought, well, I'll get off the plane in Beirut and see if there's a duty-free shop and buy some films there. Well, I got off the plane, walked into the transit lounge, set off the alarms, and was up against the wall with a submachine gun.
Baptism of fire, or what?
With my metal comb in my pocket. No. Anyway, I didn't bother getting off the plane again until we arrived in Bombay, and then I made it up to Calcutta, and stayed in Calcutta for 4 days. Well, I was flying to Chittagong on the Tuesday for an auction on the Wednesday, and came to Tuesday evening, and I heard nothing at all from London about them. I got to Calcutta, Dom Dom Airport, and phoned into the office in Calcutta and said, "Any messages for me?" And they said, "Yeah, have you got a pencil?" I said, "Yes." "Okay, buy. Anyway, I flew down to Chittagong, and I'd sent a cable from Calcutta to say I was arriving on this flight. Could they meet me at the airport? And I got to Chittagong, and which was basically a field with a hut, and there was nobody there to meet me in a car. Fortunately, there was a chap called Bill Petrie, who was a Finley man.
Yes.
He was on the flight and took pity on me and gave me a lift into town and said, "Well, if you're staying here, you'll be staying at the Agrabah Hotel because there isn't any other one." So he dropped me up there at the hotel. I went in and said, "Have you got a reservation for me?" And he said no, but it didn't matter because there was plenty of room. I managed to then phone the office, the Brookmont office, and say I've arrived, and they said, "Who are you?" Anyway, we sorted that out. The following morning, they came and picked me up and brought me in the mail to open. And the first thing I opened was the telegram which I'd sent from Calcutta, which had come in on the same plane as me. It explained.
Such were communications in those
why
days,
they did me.
particularly
Anyway,
in certain parts.
I went into the auction, having not tasted any of the teas. I bought 16,000 packages.
Wiped up, basically.
Well, it bought a lot. Vijay Awasti was buying for Lions for Bush Tea. Vijay, after about 2 hours, said no point in me staying, and he went off and carried on.
So he went out with only 400 chests, did he?
Yeah, which I actually landed him with because he was pushing me, and I landed him with some.
The joy of the auction.
Orthodox broken Pecco, the stalky stuff, way under my price. But
way over his.
Way over his. So he said, "I'm not staying here," which was lovely. Dick Luff, who was selling, nearly fell out of the auction. "Welcome to Chittagong." Anyway,
Dick. Lovely.
Anyway, so I bought this 16,000, which in terms of value wasn't massive because the tea was being sold, could have been a penny a pound. The chests were probably worth more than the tea. However, it came to prompt day, and no money had come through from Sibagagi. I phoned the bank manager, Greenleaf Bank. The manager was an Englishman. I had met him a couple of times between the auction and the prompt date. And I said, "I'm going to write a cheque for 28,000 lakhs. What will you do?" He said, "I shall raise my eyebrows." Wonderful. Anyway,
English old-fashioned.
We sorted it all out. The money came through, and after that, things worked quite smoothly. And I was there for a few months. We bought a lot of tea, shipped a lot of it back to America. It was rejected by Mr. Dick.
Mr. Dick, yes.
But yeah, that was my first experience. During my time in Chittagong, or in Bangladesh, an Egyptian delegation arrived, and I was asked to go up to Dhaka to meet them. So I managed to ride my way onto a flight, got up to Dhaka and went to the hotel where the Egyptian delegation was staying. Knocked on the door. The door was opened. I walked in and fell over the leader of the delegation, who was busy
Doing his
praying to Mecca. The leader of the delegation was a gentleman called Hosni Mubarak.
Extraordinary.
You may have heard, who went on
Just a few times.
a slightly higher thing, but yeah. So my claim to fame is
Well done, Bob.
one of my claims to fame is I fell over the
So just
president.
cutting to the chase, because I know there's a lot more coming along the line. So you got presumably then back to London, did you?
Yes.
And then how much longer were you with Brooks before things changed?
I got back in the spring of '74, and I was engaged to be married. I was in the process of buying a house in Essex when they said, "We're going to move you all to Croydon."
Oh, God.
Oh, shit.
Just what you didn't want to hear.
Just what I didn't want to hear. Anyway, I travelled down, I got married. We moved into our first property, my first wife. I'm now on my third wife.
Oh, catching up with Malcolm.
I spent my time travelling by train into London and then out to Croydon. I did that for a few months, and then Dave McCall to see that I was getting a bit fed up with this.
Isn't working too well.
And they said, "Would you like to go to Mombasa for a few months?" So they shipped me off to Mombasa for 6 months, and which was great.
Well, yeah.
Whilst I was in Mombasa, Idi Amin was in power in Uganda and decided that he wanted to hold his tea auctions in Kampala. So I was due to fly up to Kampala to participate in the first of these Ugandan tea auctions, which was due to be held on a Wednesday. On the week before, you may remember that he commandeered an Israeli plane at Kampala.
We had all.
And then the Israelis went in and raided in Entebbe, and Brooklyn decided that it probably wouldn't be a good idea for anybody to go up to Uganda, so that was cancelled. Eventually, I don't think they ever actually
never took off for it. No,
never held.
It was a crazy idea. Well, it was a crazy idea from a crazy man.
Yeah,
It was obviously could never have worked.
Yeah. As it happened, there was one famous or infamous occasion when Idi Amin got 4 Europeans to carry him.
That's right.
On their shoulders.
White man's burden.
White man's burden. One of those was the bank manager that I knew from Chittagong.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Why? Out of the frying pan into the fire, sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
No, it was mad because I went to Uganda every year until '74 when it was then impossible, not for my own safety, but no point because he'd taken over all the tea estates that had all been abandoned.
Yes. Yep.
And by then, of course, Rwanda was coming on strong, so I just missed out Uganda and used to Rwanda right up until, of course, the genocide there. So we all, anybody of us who've been involved in tea have been involved in hotspots. It's just a way of life, isn't it? Almost?
Yes.
But anyway, Bob, let's carry on. Yes.
Anyway, I came back from after my 6 months sojourn in Mombasa and started doing this journey again, and I'm getting a bit fed up.
Yeah.
But on my travel back from Croydon into London, I used to come across London Bridge to go to Fenchurch Street, and crossing London Bridge regularly, I used to bump into Paul Gill.
Oh,
He was then working for Woodhouse, Drake and Carey.
Right.
Set up the tea department there in anticipation of a future market in tea being established. Anyway, one day Paul stopped me on the bridge and said, "Would you like a job?" I said, "Yes, please." So in the late part of 1976, I left Brook Bond and joined Woodhouse, Drake and Carey, and working in 3 Keys, right next door to the Tower of London.
exactly.
A wonderful office,
Yeah.
great fun. I enjoyed it. 2 years later, I had a phone call one evening at home from George Emkus to say, would I be interested in going to Mombasa to help them establish a second tea brokers. I thought about it, but the timing was wrong for me because I'd just
married.
I'd not long. Well, we just had a
First child.
Our child. Yeah, she was born in June, and I think it was about September that George phoned up. So I had to say no, and I carried on working for Woodhouse. And I used to go into the auction on a Monday.
Well, yeah.
And come along, and then I would pop into the offices in Sir John Lighthouse, one of which was overseas tea marketing. And then in 1980, OTM approached me again and said, would I like to come and work for them in London? And I said, yes, okay, that's fine.
An offer you could hardly refuse.
Well, that's right.
They were going
no,
very well. At that
and
stage,
they were doing very well. And so I started with OTM in December 1980. Tea brokers had been set up in Mombasa for 2 years, and Henry de Montfort was running it. And there was a Kenyan director, David Mathingi.
That's right.
Just after I joined, in fact, early in 81, David fell ill and passed away.
Right.
And Henry was there on his own, hadn't been on leave for well over a year. So OTM then asked me if I would go out to relieve Henry. So in 1980, back in Mombasa in a slightly different role,
Yes.
As an auctioneer.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, you've done it all.
No, that was good fun. I mean, it was sad circumstances, but it gave me another view of the tea trade.
Mombasa was very exciting. Wasn't it? I used to love visiting every year. It really was. It was a wonderful place to be.
Yes.
And the auction was getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yes.
Yeah. You were very successful.
Well, tea brokers came in as the number 2, and then
we were
Combrock
very soon
number
after,
3, and
shirt under their shirt tail.
Now I think they're about 25, aren't they?
Oh, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
It's crazy. But yeah, I went out. I say in 1981, and then I went back. I think more or less every year for the next 10 years to relieve Henry. I was there in I think it was 1986 or 87, and tea brokers were doing some or having some tea from Rwanda coming through their catalogue, and Henry was keen for me to go down to Rwanda and see the OSEA people.
Yeah.
So I'd been trying to get in touch with them for weeks and weeks. Eventually I got through and spoke to them and said, I'm planning on coming down to Rwanda. I gave them the date. I think it was about the 28th of June. I said, I'm booking on this flight from Nairobi to Kigali. Could you meet me at the airport and book me into a hotel? And they said, oh, yes, sir. Yes, we'll do that. And I said, I'm looking forward to meeting you. I flew down on the got to Kigali airport, which again wasn't
nothing much
massive airport.
Yes.
Absolutely nobody there.
Yeah, that's right. I know the feeling.
I managed to get on a bus into Kigali. I didn't know anybody. I spoke a little French, which was fortunate. Went to the hotel where I'd
milking, because that's all it was.
And said, I've got a reservation. And they said, no, you haven't.
Thank goodness, here we come.
Well, I eventually managed to get through to OTA and say, I'm here. What's happened? And they said, well, it's the 25th anniversary of independence. And the government have commandeered all of our vehicles
And the hotel.
cancelled all of the hotel food because they were having this big celebration.
Mm.
So I think this was on the Tuesday. The next flight out was on the Saturday. Well, I've got nowhere to stay. Fortunately, I'd been given a letter for somebody in the American embassy from one of the team, David Henderson. Asked me to pass this letter on. I went to the American embassy and said, "Can you help me, please?" I don't think UK had a
We didn't. We just had a consul.
consulate. That's right.
And it was sort of basically the High Commissioner was in Uganda.
Yeah.
And in the good old days, he used to take in Rwanda. But of course,
right.
then when Uganda went up, and all the rest of it, so it was a consul for a while, yes, until after genocide when they got a full.
That's right. Anyway, I went to the American embassy and met this person and said, "Can you help me?" And he said, "You think you've got a problem? We've got Madeleine Albright and 38 people flying in with no accommodation." But she said, "The only thing I can do is a friend of mine is on leave. I have the key to her house."
Well done. Yes.
Yeah, and she gave me the key, and I went to the house and it was locked up, shuttered. Well, I better go and see if I can buy some food and essential supplies, bottle of whiskey. So I found this little shop round the corner, bought my supplies, came back to the house, and there was a sort of lean-to at the end of the garden, and I could hear this Scottish voice coming out of it. What the bloody hell's going on here? I wandered down and said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "What are you doing here?" And I explained my situation. And it turned out he was the engineer from Chihoa Tea Estate.
Oh goodness!
Who'd
Yes,
come
I
down
knew him quite well.
Come down
Yes.
to Kigali.
I've forgotten his name now, but
I can't remember his name.
yes. Very broad Scots, wasn't he?
They were expecting some machinery to arrive on the plane that he'd come down to Kigali to pick it up, couldn't get it, and was trying to come away. And he said, "Well, you may as well come back to Chihoa and stay here." So I went up and spent.
Was Mike Boyd Moss still then? I can't remember.
Yes, he was.
He was just there still.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was actually on leave.
Yeah.
Yes, because his
Yes,
son.
he always came to UK.
His son was playing cricket.
Robin Boyd Moss.
Yeah.
Yes. Very good.
Yeah, he was. I think it was either varsity match or.
Yeah. Well, he played for Northants for a number of years.
Yeah. I know he was playing in a bit, and they come over to see him play. Anyway, so I went up and spent 4 days on
Lovely
Chihoa.
estate, actually.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I used to love going up there for the weekend. It was a bit of civilization after the rest of Rwanda for many years.
Had a lovely time up there. And they then brought me back down to Kigali to catch the flight on the Saturday. But obviously, Rwanda is the home of the mountain gorilla.
Absolutely.
And
yes, I saw them. I was lucky enough to go.
I never saw them, but all over Kigali at the time were these posters, pictures of the gorilla, protectez moi,
Yes.
protectez moi. And of course, they then realised that moi is spelt the same as Moy, who was one of the dignitaries who they'd been invited. So they were busy tearing down these.
Well, apparently, the story I heard was that he was mightily impressed.
I don't know.
Then they had to sort of backpedal and sort of, I think that's when, because he thought they were literally protecting him.
Yes. Anyway, so that was it. Yes.
So, Bob, we were in Rwanda.
Yes.
So, what then?
Well, after that, things calmed down a bit, and I led a much simpler life. I used to basically in the London office go out to Kenya once a year, and then I think back in the mid to late 80s, David Marsh came back from Singapore. He bought Lipton's in Singapore, and came and joined OTM as a sort of China specialist. We knew nothing about the China business.
A few people did, of course.
And David had experience. OTM were keen to establish or widen their fields of interest.
Mm.
And I then started going to China with David, probably 86, 87. So I used to go to China in the spring
For the spring fair.
yeah, spring fair. Then to Mombasa when Henry came on leave.
Yeah.
But there were others then
Yeah.
that started. John Hales had joined us.
Fascinating contrast. Oh,
yeah.
of course, John.
Yeah,
Bob's
John
son.
came in,
Yeah.
Daniel came in. Jeff used to go to
Yeah.
used to go to
Well, Jeff had
regularly.
been with him from the start. hadn't he?
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I moved away from the sort of Kenya side of things more onto the China and the Far East, and travelled to Indonesia and to China. I say probably in the late 80s when
An
China
interesting time.
was just beginning
Yeah.
to open up,
Yeah.
and travelled in, I think, from about 85 until OTN closed in 2005. I think I travelled there to China most years for the spring fair, various other bits and pieces, and really saw China developing.
Develop, my God.
And it certainly did. I mean, it fascinating. And it in the early days, if you had a meeting with the Chinese tea people, there was always one person
Party member.
who sat there, never said a word, but just made sure that, and he was the Secret Service man. And if you asked them a question, they would always discuss it in China and then come back with an answer. But over the next few years, it really did relax, and you could talk to them. You could have, ask them about politics, and they would.
Yeah, they were prepared to open up a bit.
Open up.
Yeah.
Obviously, in '89, it got a bit touchy. They were getting a bit too liberal, I think.
Yes.
And a bit of a clampdown then. But even so, in the '90s, it was far more relaxed, and they were allowed to travel themselves outside of China, and I built up some very good friendships.
Yeah, I bet.
But
Well, I think they were thrilled that they were being able to get involved with the outside world, which they knew nothing about. I mean, we were thrilled when they joined the International Tea Committee.
Yes,
That took quite a while of persuading, but they did in the end. And then, of course, don't think they quite realised what the International Tea Committee was all about. That was another matter. But nevertheless, the relationship has even to this day, is still very good. Ian Gibbs still goes there.
That's right.
Quite regularly.
I mean, I would go out from London and quite often meet up with whoever was in the Mombasa office, not tea brokers, but ETEX there, and we would travel into China, and we would buy tea from China to ship to Mombasa to be blended. And of course, that did have to finish at the time, but there was a lot of two-way trade between
Cross-section.
people.
Changing. Yes, absolutely. I remember George Neal, one of my colleagues. They had a delegation to China. I can't remember when it would have been. It would have been in the late 90s, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric, you could tell me probably because Eric Foote, they had all the big buyers. So there was David Martin went from Lions or Tetley's. Eric Foote, and I can't remember who went from Typhoon. There was George Neal. There were about 6 of them, and of course the Chinese love a good party. I mean, they work hard and they play hard. I know from the 6 years I did. I mean, we were everlasting toasting. I mean, how I got able to leave the table that was a miracle.
Yeah.
And dear old George said Eric Foote got absolutely plastered. Woke up in the middle of the night. They all had mosquito nets. And he hadn't a clue where he was. And suddenly he was rather ill. He said, the mosquito net took the damage. But, I mean, it's a lovely stories. When,
Yeah.
when they're on those sort of delegation things, you get
Well, that's right.
you
Yeah,
get some information coming up.
it was good.
Yeah.
One of the other things I did, not obviously, over the years was become secretary of the Tea Trade Cricket Club.
You did indeed.
Yes,
Bob.
yes,
And
I
good
played
cricket you were too.
And
Yeah.
well, we had some good players.
You
I
did,
mean,
you
Jimmy
did.
Hilditch,
Yeah.
played
Pat
minor
Shotman.
counties. Pat Shotman, yeah,
Yeah.
there was some. Good
He would.
players.
I mean, if he'd stayed in Ceylon, he'd have played for Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Arnold Adaheti,
Yes.
who played for Ceylon.
Didn't he just? Rex Middleton.
Rex.
He was wicketkeeper, wasn't he? Rex?
Well,
Some of
I'll
the
tell
time.
you a story about that. I used to bowl, and there was always a discussion between Rex and Dick Bishop about who was going to keep wicket. And we went down to play Avonmouth Docks and Newport Docks down in Wales, and Rex and Dick were alternating between keeping wicket and first slip. But we'd had a young chap who just joined us, whose name I can't call now, who was fielding at second slip. I bowled, got an edge. It went between Dick and Rex, and this came out and caught it between them.
Wonderful.
I can't think of his name now, but he was a very good cricketer.
Really?
Played for Bromley down
in
Kent. Oh dear.
Anyway, good story. So,
yeah.
How did Rex and Dick take it?
I think they gave up because this chap was a wicketkeeper as well.
Oh, he
They
was.
gave up the gloves after
Tried
that.
to hand over.
Yeah, but
no, it was brilliant the way that cricket club, because when I joined the tea trade, I mean, they had golf, tennis, football, rugby, cricket. They nearly all went.
Yes.
The golf probably lasted the longest,
It did.
but that struggled in the end. Cricket stopped and then was resurrected. Who was responsible for was it Rex? Was it Jimmy held it? I can't remember.
It
just
stopped.
a combination.
It did stop for a bit.
Well,
in the,
possibly.
yeah. Well, I think it was just generally a feeling that people wanted. There were people that wanted to play cricket.
Yes, and
we came up in, and we I said we had some good players, and
ran for quite a while. Didn't it?
It did. When I was secretary, we will play the wine trade, the rubber trade,
right.
the cocoa trade, and the coffee trade. Never had a problem getting a side play against the wine trade. I can't understand that. But we're always struggling. Always struggling to get 11 out to play against them. And I remember we were playing, arranged a game against the rubber trade at Harlow, on the Revertex ground at Harlow, their home ground. And game was on a Wednesday, Tuesday night. We were one short. I got a phone call from a chap called Mick Miller, who worked for Colombo Commercial. Said, "Oh, we've got a chap over here working with us. Played a bit of cricket in Sri Lanka. Wouldn't mind a game." I said, "Well, yeah, please bring him along." Anyway, they came along. This little chap came in. Wasn't very tall, and he was quite wide. And his name was Dilip. And we said to Dilip, "What do you do? Do you bat?" He said, "Well, I bat a bit." He said, "Would you like to bat number 3?" Jimmy Hilditch was opening. I can't remember who the other one was anyway. Jimmy was given out LBW in the second over of the match.
He wouldn't have liked that.
No, he didn't like it at all. Anyway, Dilip went in to bat, and he was playing nicely and scoring runs. He got up to 88, and he cut a ball to cover, and the rubber trade fielder at cover saw it coming, put his hands up to predict it, and it stuck. So Dilip was out for 88.
No, not bad.
But obviously played a bit of cricket. He had lunch or tea, I can't remember, and went out to field after tea. Well, I think we made 200 and something. And said to Dilip, "Do you bowl?" He said, "I'll bowl a bit, leg spin." He got 4 for 3. Anyway, in the bar after the match and chatting to Dilip, and so who do you play for in Sri Lanka? He said, well, I play for SSC, Sinhalese Sports Club. And I play for Sri Lanka. In fact, I'm the captain. Dilip Mendes. Yeah. And he played the year before in a 50 over the 50 over against Australia, when against Dennis Lilly and Jeff Thompson. It ended up in hospital. But he went on to captain.
What a lovely story. Oh God,
but we never played the rubber trade again. I can't.
No, I can't think why.
No. But we had some good players. We played against some good players. I mean, the Calcutta Tea Trade Association came over. They had 3 test players. There were a couple of Sri Lankan test players who were over here training with Tetley, I think. There were some good players.
Yeah,
it was very
so
sad.
you really did well to hold up against all of that.
Yeah.
Well done, you, Bob.
But,
no, fascinating.
Yeah, it was good fun.
So any last sort of anecdotes other than the lovely ones you've given us already, or do you think?
Well, not so many, but you must remember, when going out to Kenya in the 80s, if the boys in Mombasa knew you were coming, you'd get a shopping list.
You did, absolutely. Oh, the things I took out.
Worcester sauce.
For one of the KTDA guys, I had to take out a few music set with speakers.
Oh.
How I got them through, well, I didn't get them through customs. I said, look, sorry, I've just been asked to bring them. You can sort it out yourself. And they did. I mean, how I got them on the plane, I don't know.
I was
but
asked,
you're right, there's always something.
I used to let people like Charlie Bryant, who was then in Mombasa, Mick Clark, I'm coming out, anything you need. Worcester sauce, celery salt,
yes,
baked, well, not so much baked beans are fine. Tomato juice, this was stuff to making the Bloody Marys.
Bloody Marys, of course.
And then one year, George Wairiri was getting married, and I was asked to bring out 7 white suits. They'd ordered them. They were all different sizes, obviously some were 6'2" and some were 5'2", for his groomsmen. And I thought, if I get stopped at customs, they're going to say, why have you got 7 white suits and why are they all different sizes? Anyway, they didn't stop me. I got through. And I was invited to, as were a number of the tea trade boys, to George's wedding up in Nairobi at the Catholic Cathedral. Lovely wedding, beautiful ceremony. And then there was the reception in the evening at the Kenyatta Conference Centre. And it was due to, they said, from 7 o'clock onwards. So Charlie, Mick, myself, a few others, we were there at 7 o'clock. Nobody else was there.
Oh God, yes.
And then
and
then at 9 o'clock, the chaps started coming with crates and crates of beer. We were starving by the time, so we just had a beer and then we all went off to the Chinese restaurant.
Absolutely. Oh, lovely. Yeah, well, that sounds just like, well, in Africa generally, I mean, you can pin that sort of thing on a number of countries, can't you? But they just seem to have no account of time, did they?
No.
I mean, going back to Rwanda, it's one place I wouldn't in the early days ever drive for obvious reasons. I mean, I drove all over Uganda and all over Kenya myself because I preferred to drive them, but not in Rwanda. So, you were going to be met somewhere and it's waiting at the hotel. We'll be at the hotel at 10 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
You bet.
Yeah.
11 o'clock comes, about 11:45 they arrive and say, well, there's a few problems. Yes, sure, never mind. But so one got very used to it. I mean, it was so funny when I did my trips, because I was always going out 4 months to 5 weeks to visit all the tier states, and I did all of East Africa and whatever. And so I had all this itinerary. I was really going to going to hit the ground, land the ground, and really hit it, you know. And you realise within 24 hours, forget it. Going to try to arrange appointments to Nairobi for a start, you know.
Yes, yeah.
But there we go. It was all part of life. It was fascinating.
It was.
And I enjoyed it, and I'm sure you did, Bob, every minute of it.
Yeah.
Not necessarily at the time, but looking back, I think it's been a wonderful life.
It has. Yes, I mean, I'm having, as I say, come into the tea trade by accident. You know, 58 years later, still talking about it. And you know,
as we do.
Had the great fortune of being invited to join the tea trade dinner committee.
Absolutely, Bob. Yeah, that was fun, wasn't it?
It was fun.
Yes,
Yes,
no,
yes.
great. And
I stood
you
down.
for good run.
Yeah.
Yes, no, that was well worth being a member of. But I chaired it for 10 years,
Yeah,
as you know.
yeah. I was on for 10 years.
Yeah, that's right.
But I thought that I actually came on in 2008 when we were in China together.
That's right.
At that convention, and Will Battle had just gone overseas, over to Europe, and so there was a vacancy, and I managed to persuade you that I'd be a good man.
Well, I don't think I needed any persuading on that one, Bob. I'm sure. But no, good fun. Another lovely, so many branches of the tea trade, aren't there? I mean, they're all involved because we're in tea, but such fun, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bob, it's been a delight talking to you. It really has.
Yeah.
And there we are. We've
can I just
the ground? Yeah.
One other thing. I am still a trustee of the Tea Trade Benevolent Society.
For sure. Yes.
And if you're listening to this and you know of anybody in the tea trade who is in need of help, please put them in contact with the Benevolent Society. It's what we're there for.
Yeah.
And you know, we'd love
to help.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. No, quite right. It's been a wonderful thing, the Tea Trade Benevolent. It's been going for years and years and years. And although there aren't many beneficiaries, you say, I'm sure there are a few out there that you don't know about.
No.
Somebody actually comes to
right.
you.
Yep.
No, quite right, Bob. Well done. You've done a fantastic job on that. I always say, whenever at the AGM, I always make a point of going to the AGM, although I've never been involved in the Benevolent. It's about the only thing the tea trade I haven't been directly involved in, but then so many of my colleagues have.
Yeah.
You know, Keisha and Simon Burgess,
right.
Ian Gibbs now. So I've kept out of that one, but I always support them. And I've always said, you know, I think you're the unsung heroes because you do a lot of work behind the scenes. A lot of people in the tea trade have no idea what you do.
No.
And it's so valuable. No, well done, Bob. Well, super, Bob. Thank you so much, boy. And keep going.
Well, we'll do our best.
And we'll have a look around the museum later.
Okay.
And you can make your own mind up as to how we're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.